So how can young people be supported to exit homelessness permanently, in your opinion?
Well, I think for a permanent solution, we do need policy change, because this isn't about like young people just making better choices, or if only service providers did X, Y, and Z. We have a situation in Peterborough right now where the wait list for access to housing, once you've gone through the coordinated access process, is at least 14 months. So for a young person, developmentally speaking, that is unacceptable. Like you cannot leave a young person without stable housing for 14 months when they've only been alive for maybe 16 years. That's a lot of their life, and developmentally a lot goes on. So we need structural changes. Like we need investments in a range of different publicly funded housing options for young people, including options that include lots of support and options that facilitate quite a lot of autonomy for young people, or enable quite a lot of autonomy, because some young people will need and want different things. And we tend to do this thing where we say, this is what we have and you should be grateful, rather than seeking to establish fit. And not because social workers or housing workers are bad people, but because there's insufficient stock. We don't have a lot of options for young people. So this is what we have. I mean, again, in Quebec, young people talked about going into rehab or going into mental sober living houses, not because they had felt any concern about substance use issues, but because it was the only housing they could get access to. Or going into the hospital because there was no other safe place to sleep. And I think we cannot begin to move towards a permanency plan for young people without sufficient housing stock, without narrowing the gap too between the cost of housing and people's wages. Like, I'm a professor at a university. I don't think I could rent a house in my own community for my entire family without a disproportionate amount of my salary going to housing. That's a problem. Because I make a lot of money compared to most people. And so we have created a system. We've allowed this gap to grow between, a minimum wage that people keep fighting, like heaven forbid it be above $15 an hour, and a cost of housing where it's quite normalized now to say, oh, that house is $900,000, like almost $1 million. Those two things don't match. So this is where the policy move is really, really important. And without it, everything else fails. We're all just going to work tirelessly, spinning our wheels, and not solve this problem. So we need to have that piece in place. And then we need to have better systems for listening to young people, believing what they tell us, and then working with them to define our interventions. Like, what does this need to look like for you? Which is not to say that young people, not to say any of us know best all the time, what we need. As an adult, I know that I don't always know best what I need. But I am listened to. I'm seen as an autonomous decision maker in interactions with medical providers and other. I guess that's the only sector that I would really engage with at this stage in my life. But I don't think young people are treated that way. They're often treated as though they're not telling the truth, they're not believed, and they're not seen as rights holders in their interactions with public sector professionals. And that needs to change. Because if you recognize that young people are rights holders, and they should legally be viewed as capable of contributing to their care plans, contributing to the designing of their futures, and respected when their ideas about what that should look like shift and change, because they will and they should. That's a developmentally appropriate thing, that young people at 16 might want something different from 17 or 18. And that rather than punishing young people for evolving, that we actually evolve with them and see how best to support them. I also think it's really important that young people can tell us to screw off, leave, and come back, right? Like they can hate us. They can hate service providers, be really angry, and we will still be here and let them come back. And I think we also tend not to work that way too.
No. Oh, for sure. And that whole paternalistic system that just is ingrained in every level of our system,
Yes.
all of our systems, that
Yes.
kind of, we know better
Yes.
what you need.
Yes.
Right?
Totally. And we offered you something and you said no, so that's it. You know, you're no longer eligible for our services.
Tough love here, right? Tough love. You don't do what we say, then we're just going to cut you off.
And without the love, tough love
Exactly.
without the love.
Without the love. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, man. I know.